Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of the Rogue Prince of Persia. So for those not across it, I do overviews on this channel. I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game because that's the Steam refund window. Steam says you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep a game or refund it in that time period. I tend to agree and would broadly say 20 hours in, you're probably not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video, keep it around 10 minutes, give you the broad strokes info, and then you can make up your mind on your own. So straight out of the gate, I slept on this. I don't have any real particular reason other than I don't know, maybe I'm cognizant that it's the second Ubisoft Prince of Persia side-scrolling platform game in 1 year that they've released. I guess part of me thought there's no way this could possibly be good, especially when the Two Crowns or whatever the hell it's called, which you can get on, I think, their Uplay store or whatever it is actually really, really great. What a great game. This also fantastic. I know I'm saying the thing you're not allowed to say, that Ubisoft games can be good. I don't think it's the hottest take. You can have nuance. I think they've knocked out a lot of bangers over the last couple of years of really good games, but a lot of their corporate behavior and meta stuff, just about everything they do outside of the actual game is pretty bad. So make up your own mind. How activist do you want to be or whatever? There's nothing progressive or strange or weird in this. This is just a really good game. But at the same time, I sort of get it. Some people have been bitten too many times, and it's easy when there's a million great games out there to just blacklist companies. Maybe you just don't play Ubisoft games. I understand it, but it's a little bit of a tragedy because this game's really, really good. It's actually really, really different from the other Prince of Persia game, even though the comparisons are fair. Like, why? Why are there two micro Ubisoft releases in 1 year of Prince of Persia and they're both like this? Well, the first thing worth noting is this isn't internal unless they bought Evil Empire. That's the dev that's doing it. So it's published by Ubisoft, but it's a third-party dev. And I believe Evil Empire was involved with Dead Cells, and you can feel so much of that DNA in here. This feels a lot like Dead Cells. As best as I can understand it, Motion Twin actually made Dead Cells, but then they did this thing that you see rarely where they essentially pass the cradle to grave late game development or late life cycle development to another studio. And that's who Evil Empire was. So for the past however many years, they've been doing Dead Cells, updates, quality of life, that sort of stuff. Similar to like Blue Manchu handing Card Hunter to the Knights of Unity. There's a reference no one will get. Look up Card Hunter, great game. Any chance I get to shout it out, I will. So I guess that's one huge distinction, is the other Prince of Persia game was done by an internal Ubisoft product. Like, even though you could argue it's more of an indie genre, lower budget, cheaper, still quite expensive, that was very much still a AAA game. This is very much indie, and the price tag reflects it. But the most striking difference is if Prince of Persia Two Crowns, I'll have to look it up and see what it's actually called. If that's what you would call a traditional Metroidvania, because it is, back and forth, Ori and the Forest, really good. Again, I stress, check it out. This is a roguelike, much closer to Dead Cells. It's not Dead Cells, obviously, but there is a lot of the mechanics that were kind of established and planted in that game. And so even at a blush, they look kind of the same, different art style, but everything else looks the same. I think that should clarify. If you played Dead Cells, you know what you're in for here. So it's not back and forward, it's running. You're going from left to right. The combat is really tight. It's really clean. The meta progression is limited. It's still a roguelite, not a roguelike. And for those not across it, light is the modern phenomenon where they outsource meta progression to varying degrees. As a general rule of thumb, the more meta progression that you put into a roguelite, the kind of more you dilute the core experience. If it gets to a point where you can't actually make any progress until you've grinded for a couple of hours of unlocking upgrades, I would argue that's kind of bad design, but that's the egregious roguelite. Whereas roguelikes with a K, self-contained. They don't have any meta progression at all. And they're rarer and rarer these days because they don't really tap the dopamine-fueled nature of gaming these days. That's why roguelites are so big. So this is lighter as far as that goes. There is meta progression. There are weapons and things that you unlock, but it's not that much, at least not now. It is early access, which is a bit unusual. I don't think Ubisoft really does that. In fact, they're coming back to Steam quietly. This has achievements, and I noticed that they ported Avatar across under the radar, and that has achievements too. So who knows? I think maybe Ubisoft's got their tail between their legs and they're just quietly coming back to Steam, which is probably good for everybody. Where this really does shine in the meta progression is it has this sort of badge medallion system. It's very difficult to describe. You could study it on brilliant gameplay mechanic design. Games being needlessly complex can be a problem, especially in a lot of the niches that I enjoy, you know, colony builders, that sort of stuff. Complex for the sake of complex. Whereas there's real beauty in taking a clever, streamlined design and keeping it simple yet engaging. Essentially, you've got like a 4 circle slots across the bottom of your screen in your inventory, and these badges go in it. And what they do is in their stat line, and it's fairly clearly delineated, it'll be something like, I don't know, if you vault over a dude, you'll cause a poison gas cloud to happen. And that might just be the default passive that it offers, but it will have stars underneath, pips, levels, whatever you want to call it, 1 and 2 or 3 even. And you slot it into that circle, and once it's in there, it's perma-slotted. You can slot things over it, and you will as you get better things, and you sort of just delete and replace. But it will have adjacency bonuses, I'm using my hands, where it will make randomly seeming, depending on the medal, I guess, medallion, it will make maybe 2 to the left go up 1 level or 1 to the right go up a level. So as you're slotting this thing in and you're trying to put it in a higher level slot for its own bonus, it in turn creates these adjacency synergy bonuses onto the circles, I was going to say squares, next to it for future medals to go in. So you're essentially trying to put the best 4 slots in the best position so as to get as many of them tripping their kind of set bonus in a way. It's very cool and it's very clever, and that's where all the depth in the run-based equipment system goes. I've never seen it before, and it's brilliant. At first, you might be like, oh, there's not really a lot of weapons or anything like that. Then you realize this is where the party's at. It's in these little medals, and it's really good. It gets to a point where you don't really care that much. Oh, I got a new weapon, it's a slightly higher level, whatever. I got a new medallion, all right, let's try and slot that appropriately. The combat works really well. It's very, very clean, punchy. The enemies hit quite hard, so you kind of have to have a bit of a mastery of it. So it's not just casual spam or anything like that. And again, not to bash on Dead Cells. I love Dead Cells, but I haven't played it in years. But in most, it is very much a power curve like Risk of Rain, where it is about creating armor combos and all that, where you're just swinging wildly and you're blowing shit up on the screen. This doesn't go that wild. This still relies on a very tight combat interplay. So you've got like these little vaults, you've got to kick, and you kick dudes, and if you kick someone, it doesn't really do much, but if you kick them into another dude, you'll stun them both or kick them into a wall or off a ledge. They'll have these sort of like aquamarine overshield looking things, and that makes them kind of kick invulnerable. So you got to be careful you don't get into too much of a rhythm there, because they will just essentially don't poise break, right? God, I'm thinking about Elden Ring too much. So then maybe you need to vault around and do your little dodge with your tiny iframe window and kick a dude that doesn't have a shield into that dude with a shield to try and break it. So there's complexity in there. I can't believe I've left it this long to mention it, but there's just so many really clever original mechanics in here. But you don't double jump per se, but as you're moving through the world, there's ruins, there's 2.5D background walls that you can see. Then if you hold like, I don't know what it is, left trigger or something, you do a little wall run on the background. I've never seen this before at all. Usually when you have 2.5D, is the weird term that people throw it around, it's just assets making it look a little bit more depth, right? But it's all aesthetic. No, with this, a huge part of the interplay is essentially using wall runs off the back wall in the background to, you know, grapple around and monkey around and jump through areas. And there are little challenge rooms, just kind of like the other Prince of Persia game actually, where it really does twist you and stretch you to dodging around to try and get the reward at the end. It's like a little challenge mode platforming thing. And it becomes so intuitive. Anyway, so look, I'm gushing about this, and that's because it deserves it. I mean, I didn't even mention the soundtrack. The soundtrack is actually wild. It's this weird lo-fi, I think the kids call it trap music, but it's this sort of, I don't know, it depends how purist you are, but bastardization of kind of Persian, twangy, traditional music mixed in with this, you know, driving beat, and it's so earworm. It's so good without being, you know, pumping bass the whole time. So yeah, I am really impressed, and shame on me for kind of sleeping on this for a couple of weeks. But yeah, that's the real main takeaway, is it's got all these little mechanics that in another setting you'd call it a gimmick, but it would seem in the hands of these devs, they're actually really well implemented and interesting, engaging, realized loops. Every aspect of this game is wonderful from top to bottom. And, you know, it's not that expensive in the scheme of things, so I think worth your time, worth your money. It is early access. It seems like some of the unlocked trees have limits. You know, it's only got so much of the game implemented, so keep an eye on it at the very least. But yeah, I love this. This is really wonderful. And look, if you made it this far and maybe you're still fencing about Ubisoft, like recommendations, definitely this, definitely the other Prince of Persia. You may even want to check out the new Avatar while it's on a launch sale on Steam. That was at the time the most beautiful game I had ever played. The jungles and the forests and all that just feel alive. It's unbelievable. And it's very much Far Cry, but Avatar. It felt like it dragged on a little bit, sure, but I thought it was great. You can probably find the review on the channel. And Prince of Persia Mirage, I think, is something that doesn't get talked about not nearly enough. That was such a return to form and a brilliant Assassin's Creed game for fans of the original trilogy like me. I'm terrified of what the fuck they're going to do with this Assassin's Creed Shadows, but on the other hand, they kind of hit harder than they miss these days. All the bullshit company controversy aside. I guess it's a good time to be a fan of the games they're putting out. You just got to be careful who you tell, I suppose. All right, team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.